Welcome back to episode 16 of the Zoo House Sports Fantasy Football Zoo podcast. This is your first time tuning in. My name's Matt, aka Zoo House Zebra, and I'm joined once again by my better co-hosts,
Tom, aka Zoo House Girl. I'm the reason why the ladies listen and the guys be hating.
And Rich, aka Zoo House Bear, your resident fantasy football champion.
Usually, and I'm not cringing at my own introduction there, we're a bunch of mates who love football and fantasy sports, and now we're doing a podcast about it. We've got everything covered, from potentially great advice to Super Bowl takes, all sprinkled with a little bit of silliness and humour.
This week's episode sees us look at the rookie class of 2020 for wide receiver and running back. We covered quarterbacks in our episodes around the draft, so be sure to listen back for our thoughts and hot takes.
Well, let's jump straight into it. I think we should start with the most obvious choice and probably the hottest rookie out there at the moment, CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
When we say
I don't know about
hottest,
you guys. Hottest.
Are you talking about his looks or his fancy talent there? So I just want to say we're not objectifying.
It's not even his fantasy talent. It's his opportunity now, isn't it? Jermaine Williams has opted out. He's got some more opportunity to lead the running backs over by the Chiefs. I've seen him jump up in mock drafts. He's becoming, round one picks at the moment. That's where I've seen him. And I think that's absolutely crazy. I was picking him looking for, round 3, great value. Round 2, if you're really pushing it. But now he's just going straight away. I don't know what you guys have seeing or what you think of that, actually.
It's just a case of Damien Williams goes. There's no more ambiguity there in the backfield anymore. So boom, let's go. We know who's going to be the lead running back on probably the best offense in the league. I still worry a little bit, but I mean, why would you not go for him? I've done some maths and I'm sure we'll cover that in a minute. And I'm worryingly high, but I mean, there's literally nothing stopping the kid now, right?
But would you risk a round 1 pick on him though? That because if you want him, that's where he's going.
No, not round 1. Absolutely not.
It depends how big your league is. If you were talking a 14, 12-man league, round 1, would you have him over someone like Kenyon Drake? Personally, I probably would in round 1. If you're at the tail end of, say, 13, 14 pick.
14, yeah. If you're at the tail end of a 14-team league, I should say, then I can see that going. But in a 10 or 12-man league, I don't think there's any need to reach into the first for him.
No, it'll be going at the start of the second now. Yeah. I've seen that every single mock. So if you're pick 10, pick 9 now, I think you're no-brainer pick if he comes to you. And
if he falls to you there, that's great value. I think at the moment, I think he'll produce some really big numbers. I think you'll snap him up, as you say.
Is he going to break inside the top 6 picks of round 1? No. If he does, and someone in our home league or in your home league takes him, profit from their mistake. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think he'll have fantasy numbers, but outside of Kareem Hunt, there's not been that many running backs profit because Mahomes, even though he asked for CEH, they've just got such good passing options. He's the best quarterback in the league. I know Lamar won the NFL MVP, but who got the mega money contract? Who won the Super Bowl? Who won the Super Bowl MVP and has a cannon of an arm?
But I think I saw a stat today. I might be wrong, but I think I saw it on Twitter that CEH in college had a 95% catch rate.
Yeah, I was going to touch upon that. And the 55 receptions he got, as I say, I think
in his last season was that, yeah.
Yeah, it was literally only 1 or 2 he dropped. And if you look back at the plays, that's because Burrow was doing like a panic check down, there were defenders on him. And actually, if he'd caught it, he could have lost yardage, maybe you'd argue. But he's an intelligent player. He's got his head screwed on. And let's be honest, you've got all the weapons in the Chief offense that are going to make defenses cry. And as we talked about, the passing game is so strong, that should open up the running game, shouldn't it?
Well, look at what they did in the Super Bowl.
So I was going to say, with that, we're saying he's moving into an offense that has so much utility to utilize at the moment already. LSU last year, I mean, he not only did 55 receptions for 450 yards, he also did 1,400 rushing yards as well with LSU's offense. So is he already used to that sort of dynamic team aspect and just ready to plug in, as you say, for Burrow to drop off to, or in this case, it will be Mahomes if he's needed, and then intelligent plays get him to the yards?
I've joked before about how everyone calls Alabama the 33rd NFL franchise, but last year it may as well have been LSU. They were running a pretty good playbook. They were just dominating most of their opposition. Their quarterback's gone number one overall, so it's not as if he's coming out of, I don't know, like Notre Dame or somewhere like that where they're still a good football team, but there's going to be a step up to the NFL for them. So I drew a comparison in my head earlier that I think he's potentially on for the same kind of rookie season as Fournette managed to land himself back in 2017. And, it's recent memory, 2017, we saw a rookie running back come in the right situation and make a big difference. And I don't see why that can't happen with CEH.
Do you know if you actually go onto the Chiefs depth chart on their website, they don't actually have an RB2 at the moment. It just goes from Damian Williams, skips RB2's blank, over to Darwin Thompson, RB3. So you got to think, are they just holding off, giving anticipation, and just slotting in CEH there straight away, which now means he'll be RB1 and getting those touches?
I would imagine it's more a case of
he's not signed his contract, maybe.
He might not sign his contract, and I don't think they have to release their first depth charts until a couple of weeks into camp or something, do they?
Right.
So I guess it's a case they haven't had to update them yet. But I mean, we all know it's going to be CEH at the top, and then probably followed by Darrell Williams, and then where Washington and Thompson come is going to be a bit of 50-50 between them.
But I think if you look at other rookie running backs that have had a huge impact coming out into a strong team, you look at Zeke, you look at Saquon, you look at Fournette, you look at Derrick Henry. For me, I personally don't see Clyde Edwards-Helaire at that level. And he's only 5'7", winning at 207 pounds was his college year. Maybe, stack some muscle on, maybe ST 220, 225. He's not going to grow any more inches, is he? He's only 5'7". Has he got that explosive cutaway speed Barkley had and the generational playmaking talents? No. I think, a second round pick is fair. And I think he'll end the season with maybe 1,100, 1,200 yards and I'd say 8 touchdowns. And
are you saying yards on the ground or total all-purpose yardage?
I'm going to go yards on the ground for that one, and I'm going to say between 250 and 325 receiving, with maybe an additional few touchdowns.
Do you think he'll do like a 1,500-odd yard all-purpose yard season?
Rookie season with the Chiefs.
Yeah. Jesus.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs are going to put points on everyone. Have you predicted his touchdowns?
Well, that's round one. That's a round one pick in my mind if you're predicting those numbers.
Yeah, you can't predict those numbers and not have him in your first-round picks.
Yeah.
You're predicting him higher than Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry.
Look at Kenyon Drake. If you extrapolate out his numbers from last year, he'd have come up with something similar, correct?
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
No, we've been repeating this after episode with the your extrapolation.
However, Kenyon Drake's not going in. Eckler finished RB whatever. He's not even in the first round. He's been falling occasionally to the third. And the only reason he's not going at the first, for me, is the risk of the unknown.
But the unknown's gone now, mostly. I guess.
This is it. It's not only the unknown, though, but we don't know what role he's going to play for the Chiefs. And I think this hits a number of these rookies, is that because the mini camps haven't gone ahead, we just don't know where they're going to fit in and how much they're going to be utilised. As you said earlier, even though Patrick Mahomes called up the GM and said, I want CH on this team, it doesn't mean that the playbook's going to work to his favour. So I feel like he's going to go round one in my mind, especially in our home league. If he falls to 11th or 12th pick, I'm going to take him up, but that'll be round 2, so I'll be happy with that.
I'm going to put it out there as a closing point on this one, because I can feel like you're getting ready to corral us on there, Matt. I think he's going to go for 200 carries, 60 receptions. As you say, it's a pass-heavy offense. 8 rushing touchdowns, 3 receiving touchdowns, between 1,250 and 1,300 total yards, and I think he'll finish as RB8.
You're not miles off me then. I've just been a bit more generous on my receiving yards.
Yeah, I mean, I've got him as just over 850 rushing yards and then about 400 receiving yards.
Bloody hell. You think it'd be almost a 33-66 split? Wow.
Well, you said yourself, they're a very pass-heavy offense. The only running back who's made big waves there has been Kareem Hunt, who we know is very good as a pass-catching back, so it kind of makes sense for him to fit into that kind of mold. And I think RB8 is potentially his ceiling this year. I think RB20 is potentially his floor, so, with him, you're guaranteed somewhere between an RB2 and a mid-range RB1.
I'm stuck here, and my last closing point in CH would be my home league people, I know unfortunately I'm in it with you two and others who listen to this, please don't touch CEH. Let him fall. Let me profit in the second round off him. But unfortunately, if you're at the end of the first, say your 9th, 10th pick, I'd actually rather have him than someone like Julio Jones. I personally would. He's more guaranteed a safer floor. We've spoken about this boom bust. I think he's a safe floor player of guaranteed points per week. In that offense, you just guaranteed it. But
that's really interesting. So let's move on to our next player, who I think we should all know, Jonathan Taylor. Moving to the Colts, I'm really confused as to why everyone's really up for CEH and yet not having the same hype for Jonathan Taylor. Now, is it the competition he's facing in the Colts?
Yeah.
You got Marlon Mack coming back off a 1,000-yard season, which is fantastic. But is he going to take over? I mean, if you actually look at his stats, he nearly, and this is unfortunate, but he nearly got rushing yards, 2,000 a season in Wisconsin. He got overall, over his 3 years, he got 6,174 yards. And although he only got 250 receiving during his last season, it's still great.
That touches on a good point. I think one of the reasons people are going to be down on him, and we have to remember that the vast majority of people these days play PPR leagues. So a lot of the stuff you read from all the other analysts will quite usually be geared towards PPR rankings. A lot of people on Twitter and Instagram will be geared towards PPR rankings. And the big question around Taylor versus CEH is his passing game. What is his role in the passing game? Because I think he's got nowhere near a 95% completion rate, I'll tell you that. I imagine he's way closer to 65% with a lot of other players. And I think that's a big problem. That, and as you say, Marlon Mack, you have to get the feeling they've brought him in because they want to start ushering Marlon Mack out of town, but how quickly that happens and how much that happens throughout the season, I think is the big unknowns that suddenly drop him a number of rounds coming down from where CEH is going.
He's a safe 5th round pick for me. I'd take him over other players, RB1 such as Singletary and Montgomery. I think personally the upside is there, potential's there, and Chris Ballard, the GM, he traded up to get him.
Yeah.
The coach has come out and said, actually, it's not a 1-2 punch with Mack, it's a 1-1 punch. Now, I think Marlon Mack loses his job game 5, game 6, and with COVID, say Marlon Mack gets the COVID and he's out for a few weeks, boom, you've got a guaranteed RB1 putting up stupid points with that Colts offensive line.
Stacked. Oh. Quentin Nelson, get in there, mate. Or is he Cowboys? He might be Cowboys, actually.
He's both. He's both.
He's both. He's neither. It doesn't matter. He doesn't listen. He won't be upset. This touches, though, on my point I wanted to ask both of you. Say, theoretically, what is it, Thursday, Friday this week, the opt-out deadline? So maybe when you're listening to this, the opt-out deadline has been and gone.
Yep.
If Marlon Mack does a surprise opt-out between us recording this and the deadline, how far does JT start shooting up draft boards? We've seen Hilaire jump maybe even up to 2 rounds as Damian Williams opted out. Jonathan Taylor, he's going ADP 46 at the minute, so he's in the 4th round. Where does he go?
End of the 2nd every day of the week.
I reckon jump straight to the 2nd, if not some leads he'll push first.
Because he is a unit. That picture you tweeted out earlier, Matt.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Jesus.
It's like, no, this is not an offensive lineman. This is Jonathan Taylor. And you do just look at him and think, wow, he is. Yeah. And I mean, no wonder. This is how he's been able to put up 6,000 yards and 55 touchdowns in 3 seasons.
So, and the thing for me is, just to cut you off, is Rivers. Rivers loves to check down. And if Marlon Mack isn't there and his pass catching hasn't been the best of years, and he builds a rapport with Rivers, in PPR leagues he steps up a lot more as well. Look how much Eckler and Gordon caught check downs from Rivers. He's suddenly not going to change his game, is he?
No.
Even with a better O-line.
Taking a side swipe on that, as I said earlier, no one really knows what Taylor's pass catching game is like. It might be terrible. If it is, and Marlon Mack gets beaten out of a job and doesn't even come in for passing downs, are we suddenly seeing a huge bump for Nyheim Hines or Jack Doyle?
That's a good point.
No, I know. I had him for 2 years. I really wanted him to do well, but I think it's time to drop that. But Jack Doyle, if Jonathan Taylor isn't up for the pass catching game, might suddenly, that might be a little tight end to not sleep on. I know it's outside of what we're meant to be talking about today, but I couldn't
You
shake
say he
that
didn't do
feeling
pass
earlier.
catching. All right, he got 26 his last year at Wisconsin, 252 yards. It was almost 10 yards per carry on a pass catch. Yes, 26 in an entire season isn't huge, and he only had less than double digits before. And I do worry, has some tread been taken off the tires with those, as the Zebra points out, 6,000 yards?
It's a lot of work to be putting your body through, isn't it?
But he looks a physical specimen. I just hope he becomes another Derrick Henry. Look at Derrick Henry. He doesn't have that much pass catching, but he still puts up really
He's got
strong.
almost no pass catching. He just runs straight over people.
In a standard league, Jonathan Taylor's your dream.
Yeah. And I actually wrote that down here. I was like, maybe he's just way better in standard than he is in PPR scoring.
Yeah. But it's your point, Marlon Mack. End of the second is his floor. If he goes anywhere after that in the third, you're like profit if Marlon Mack goes out. And then if anything happens, not if anything happens, even if nothing happens is what I was trying to say, I'm going to get my words out, I'd still take Jonathan Taylor in the fifth. I think he's got more potential upside than other people you're looking at, and we'll talk about.
So you're happy to kind of draft him to slot him into a flex pick straight away off the board, even with Marlon Mack there, or would you just have him on the bench as a good sleeper?
Probably flex. I think he'll be getting game reps game one, snaps game one. Montgomery did last year in Chicago. If you look at other players who beat out Jordan Howard, Miles Sanders is getting snaps game one. Not much. These are the things. Rookies will get snaps, and you don't pick someone in the second and trade up to just go, sit on the bench unless you're Green Bay.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go on to numbers because I love numbers. I've got him at the minute finishing RB22, I think, on the year. I've gone for, again, I think he'll get up to about 200 carries because they're quite a run-heavy offense because they've got such a stacked offensive line. Again, I think he'll get 850 to 900 rushing yards because, as you say, I think it might even be game 4 he starts to take on the majority of the workload from Marlon Mack. But what's letting him down versus finishing 14 places higher over where I've got CEH, A, is sharing time at the start, and B, we just don't know what he's going to do in the pass game.
Yeah, it's fair. And I'd be happy in the 5th round with an RB22. At that sort of level,
That's
you'd be
the thing.
talking.
If you can pick up an RB, somebody's going to finish your season out RB2 when you need a solid RB2 going into your fantasy playoffs, and you can pick him up in the 5th round.
Yeah,
Sign me up, mate. Sign me
no
up.
doubt there.
And you're talking RB22 with a potentially slow start. But if you looked at half 1 versus half 2 of the season, he could finish an RB10.
Yeah.
If you look at it, because
12,
you're
something like that,
weighted across the whole season.
Yeah, it's one of those. If you're in a dynasty league, pick him up. He'll be good next year. Marlon Mack will be out next year, and there's another running back we'll talk about in a little bit. I think that's much of the same fate. But yeah, pick him up if you're in dynasty. He's going to be big.
Right then, well, let's move on to our first wide receiver of the evening, CeeDee Lamb, moving to the Dallas Cowboys, shall we?
It's a rough place to go as a wide receiver, isn't it?
It's a rough place to go because you've got Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, who both last season got over 1,000 yards. That's pretty tough to come into, but it's already been rumoured that CeeDee Lamb is going to be favoured by Dak. And Dak is on form. He is the quarterback that I'm aiming for this season, like without a doubt. And I'm if he does favour him, I'm happy to say it. Every single mock draft, I'm like, get Dak, get Dak.
Stay away from Dak.
Matt, all right, if you take Dak, I want to name your second-born child. On exclusive name rights in your second-born child.
That's never happening.
You get Dak, and then you just trade him away.
Maybe I'll just call him Dak.
So, that's quite cool. Or Dakary.
Apparently, in the press today, Amari Cooper said, "Yeah, I'm expecting us to have 3,000-yard wide receivers next year. Me, Gallup, and CeeDee."
Was he?
Could you imagine that as Dallas? Like, what happens to their running backs then? Tight ends? Just suddenly, everyone can't share these
but
touches.
This is the interesting thing, right? So Tavon Austin got 24 targets last year. Randall Cobb, 83 targets last year. Both of them are gone. That's 107 targets already, ready to go around.
So there you go. Okay.
Michael Gallup put up 1,000 yards last year on 113 targets. So being around 1,000 yards and 107 in that offense.
You've gone from Jason Garrett, who can't see past the running game and just called atrocious plays at sometimes. If you're a Cowboys fan, you wanted Garrett to succeed, but also you were thinking, sweet Lord, please just pass the ball. And Dak isn't the worst thrower in the game. It's not his best suit. He's not Mahomes, is he? Or that old Florida man who had his birthday the other day. But McCarthy is known for his passing game. You looked at Green Bay where he came from, he threw more passing than rushing. The Green Bay rushes in fantasy when McCarthy there until Aaron Jones weren't that noticed. I mean, admittedly, they didn't have the best rushes. Looking at you, Eddie Lacy, you could have played fat ball. But sorry, Eddie, I shouldn't fat shame, but you're a porker. But CD Lamb, going back to it, yes, I could see him touching 1,000 yards, and I can see him being a wide receiver 2. Will he be wide receiver 1? No, the money is paid to Amari and AC and DP. AC DP, there's your second kid's name, Matt. There you go. Pick them both up this year.
Never happening.
What do we reckon the chances are of him actually finishing with 1,000 yards, though?
Them.
Yeah.
It depends how much Dak favours him, to be quite honest. Is CD Lamb going to come in and actually take some targets away from Cooper and Gallup, even though there are some empty, and therefore, yeah, he could easily finish 1,000? In my mind, it all depends on Dak. Whereas, our first two, Jonathan Taylor and CH was, well, where do they fit in the team? In this instance, I think it's how much does Dak favour him?
Do you know what? Actually, no, I'm going to go back, and I've just checked the stats. Gallup had 1,100 yards last year.
On 113 targets.
Yeah. And Amari Cooper had almost 1,200 off 119 targets.
So just to put that in perspective, although I know it's not the NFL, CD Lamb last year did 1,300 yards off 62 receptions.
That's insane.
He averaged 21.4 yards per reception last year.
That is college
That
ball,
is
though.
insane.
We can't forget that's college ball.
Agreed. But it shows that the potential's there. He did it in every season, 17.5, 17.8, and then finished on 21.4. So he's obviously going for the deep balls, or he's good for running. I haven't seen clips.
It's unbelievable that he fell to Dallas at that pick. Everyone thought he'd be the first name off the board, him or Judy. Everyone thought CD Lamb, to be honest. And then when Ruggs went first in the draft, who we'll touch upon later, I know me and the pair were watching it live, and we were shook. We were shook.
It makes sense when you look back at who made the pick, but yeah, we were like, he's not the best receiver here. Like, there's arguably 2 or 3 receivers who should have gone before Ruggs, but I've actually been incredibly boring with a lot of my wide receiver projections today. I think we're going to see about 85 targets and 50 to maybe 60 receptions, absolute max, I think, and then only a handful of touchdowns for between 650 and 700 yards. And I think that potentially puts him outside of a flex conversation, because the thing is, how many rookie wide receivers have come in and finished a season really strong? You look at someone like DK Metcalf last year, right? You'd argue DK probably had one of the best rookie seasons of a wide receiver last year. He finished wide receiver 30-something.
What about Godwin?
Good point. I think that was a slightly different scenario.
DJ Shark?
DJ Shark a rookie last year? Okay. I don't know. There's too many mouths to feed there for me.
Kenny Golladay?
Kenny Golladay
not
wasn't a
admittedly
rookie
this season.
last year.
No, he wasn't, but if you look how he's progressed, and it's a different
Exactly,
offense.
progressed. That's the thing. I think next year CD Lamb could be huge.
I think a lot of these players we're talking about
yeah.
today could be huge next year, but we're trying to find the value, as you said, Rich, trying to find value of this season for you to potentially get some great value from players that potentially haven't proven themselves yet. It's a risk.
You can pick up CD in about the 12th round right now.
That's incredible.
And if that's the case, I mean, why are you not? A lot of these wide receivers you're picking up that late, or not even having to draft, and why would you not take the punt? We've just said that Dak might favour him. Amari Cooper's seen him in training camp for 3 days and gone, yeah, this kid's going to be on 1,000 yards with the rest of us. 12th round. If he's there and you don't know who to pick, keep him in your mind. Just pick him up. Give it a shot.
I think you could get yards, but not touchdown.
That's the problem. Yeah, I've got him on
that
4
in
touchdowns.
fantasy, that could hurt you.
Yeah.
Well, all things that need to be progressed, and hopefully, with the training in Dallas Cowboys, maybe this is something they're going to work on. Just like Jonathan Taylor improving his receiving yards, maybe this is something that the Colts improve on him. I think this is one of the major things that they have come from college, but where maybe the training facilities aren't as focused or as good. possibly they'll get the training they need that can improve them. Anyway, so enough of that CD Lamb. Let's move on to our next player on the board. J.K. Dobbins moving to the Ravens, running back. Well, I think it's going to be an interesting start already for our conversation anyway, considering that J.K. Dobbins has already come out saying he's happy to learn from the others. You've got Mark Ingram, Gus Edwards, and Justice Hill on the roster from last year, still there. So where exactly does he fit in?
I think that's him being quite polite, if I'm honest. I think he's fully aware that he's going to have that, I wouldn't say starting job, but I think he's fully aware he's going to be featuring in the plans from day one. I've got him. This for me is reasonably similar to the Jonathan Taylor situation. I think game one, rep one, I think I can't remember the last time I watched an NFL game and a team's first play of the game wasn't a running play. And I think we'll see Mark Ingram take that first run. But I think it's going to be 50-50 for at least the first handful of games. And much like Jonathan Taylor, I can just see JK just kind of sliding in and just slowly take over by the end of the year.
Well, I've got an interesting spanner to throw at you here. So Ingram was the second furthest rushing yards on the team with just over 1,000 yards and 200 carries. Edwards was on only 700 yards and 133 carries. I mean, that's not great there. And Hill, 225 yards for 58 carries. But I think the spanner is Lamar Jackson, who was obviously the main running back with 176 for 1,200 yards.
And that's the other thing.
If the quarterback doesn't give you the ball, how are you meant to do anything?
I think they're going to try and step back Jackson's running this year again, because I think from when he took over for those last 6 games, they took a step back last year from the amount he was running, and I think this year they're going to try it again, because at the end of the day, they probably want him to be their franchise quarterback, and if you're a quarterback and you're running, you're one hit away from being done.
Yeah.
It's not like a running back, we've said before, where if a running back gets an injury, there's a very clear path for his backup to step in and take the reins. Not quite so simple with a quarterback, is it?
Yeah, in the red zone, you're not going to pound a quarterback in, are you? You're going to have your grinder in J.K. Dobbins or Ingram. And I think you'll end up with a 1-2, maybe a 1-2-3 punch in Dobbins, Ingram, and Jackson. And from a PPR and standard fantasy, that's the issue for Dobbins. He's sharing carries. It'll be in a committee, always with Lamar Jackson, up to 3 people with Ingram. And if Gus Edwards gets a sniff and people, he's one big game a season where he scores double-digit points and everyone goes crazy about Gus Edwards. Now, I think he'll learn from Ingram. He'll split some shares, and as the bear says, towards the end of the season, he might be taking a higher snap count than Ingram. But that Ravens team, for me, fantasy-wise, there's only one name you're taking off the board, and it isn't J.K. Dobbins. For me, I wouldn't touch him in any drafts, personally, unless you're in Dynasty this year. I just don't see the value of that pick, even in a late round.
Now, the bonus here is Mark Ingram is 30 years old. And it's a pretty rough position to play running back. Should anything happen to the 30-year-old man having to run into defensive lines for a living, for someone who's going in the 9th round, J.K. Dobbins all of a sudden is a lock-in to be a top 10 running back, right?
Yes. Not top 10 lock-in, top 15, I'd argue with. But I agree with you, his age is a concern. And look, he still played 15 games and logged 202 attempts. He's not getting any younger, and I think he knows that. I think they probably had the conversation of when they were drafting Dobbins of saying to him, we are going to draft a running back pretty early. We want him to take over from you.
Yeah.
He's an experienced pro and he knows the situation.
I think this is a real farewell tour, almost like Eli had last year with Danny Dimes taking over. I think this is going to be one of those cases of we'll give you one last run around the block, and then you're free to go and explore other opportunities should you choose.
I think he is the oldest running back who played, apart from Shady and Frank Gore.
I was going to say,
and
Frank
Adrian
Gore's
Peterson.
about 73.
Yeah. But, I mean, he's put the numbers for years, Ingram has. And if you were going to play fantasy, probably take Ingram first, because those first few weeks are vital to get on a roll.
Who does Frank Gore play for?
Buffalo Bills?
Buffalo.
Or has he moved in the offseason, or has he re-signed?
He must have moved to the Bucks though, right? Because that's where all the pensioners go.
No, it's fine. We got shady. They got shady the other day. That's our pensioner running back coming in.
That's the pensioner.
It's pretty old. I mean, you've got a lot of experience.
There we go.
To be honest, I really like Dobbins as a player, and I was a bit surprised the Ravens took him.
Again, though, if you're in Dynasty, let's have him. But outside of that,
great value
I think
there.
he just
Great value
about
there.
has standalone value as a flex this year, but you're probably not expecting too much.
But I think I'm with there on Tom on the Ravens. I think there are better potential rookies out there that you can take advantage of. Guess what? Moving on to one of those that I think there's great potential, DeAndre Swift moving to Detroit. Now, he is competing against Kerryon Johnson for the number 1 role in Detroit. But has Kerryon Johnson really done that much?
Oh, yeah, he has. He stayed on the sick bed for a lot of games.
Yes.
Brilliant IR player.
Now, I don't think I can even say this. Let's just say he did a grade 1 knee strain and tore a meniscus. Don't even know what that... Yeah, thank you. There we go. So he's only played 18 games in 2 seasons. It's not great. He's only just done over 1,000 yards in both. I feel like Swift is going to come in and swiftly take over.
Oof.
Oh,
I see what you did there.
I'm going to temper your expectations here because I have little to no hope for Swift, and there's no way I'm drafting him. Here's a fun fact for you. Since drafting Matt Stafford in 2009, the Lions haven't ranked inside the top half of the league for rushing attempts per game in any season.
Wow. Since 2009.
Yeah.
I mean, they had arguably the greatest running back of all time. Walter Payton and Barry Sanders is a good debate. But since Barry Sanders, the Lions haven't had that good a rusher. I can't see Patricia changing that.
Do you know who the last running back was to breach the 1,000-yard mark in Detroit?
Garrett Blunt?
Reggie Bush in 2013. They've not had someone rush for over 1,000 yards since 2013.
Do you know what also adds to all this fuel is, DeAndre Swift has actually come out and said that Detroit Lions have said to him, we don't exactly know how we're going to play you. Openly admit that. Mini camps aren't available once again, but he knows he'll be in the backfield. So, at least he'll know sort of where to stand. How they'll use him is anyone's guess. So are you guys... Rich, you've already said you're not looking at him at all during the draft. Tom, you even keeping an eye on him? Late pick?
No.
Thing is, I've seen him go though.
His name, I'd be on him with Swift, as you've made the great pun. But he's just in Detroit, and that's where hopes and dreams go to die.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
If he was, I would almost say any other team. If he was in almost any other team, I'd be on him because he was my favourite running back in the draft. I must have fired off about 1 billion tweets asking the Bucks to trade up to pick him up at the end of the first. I was convinced he was going to be going somewhere in the first round, but he has gone to the career graveyard that is the Detroit Lions.
I think the issue is, and my sources inside the NFL are apparently worried about, and this is one of the reasons I've moved the COVID opt-out deadline up, which we'll talk about maybe at the end or something. Matt Stafford, his wife's not too well. He's just had a young baby. There are serious rumours he may be the biggest name to opt out, which, if he did, not just DeAndre Swift gets hurt, but the whole Detroit Lions in fantasy just becomes a graveyard.
Who's their backup?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to say Chase Daniel. Might be completely wrong.
He played last year, didn't he? Because Stafford broke his back. I can't remember his name for the life of me. But if that does happen, he seemed to favour Marvin Jones a little bit. So that's a little good thing to know.
Good little hints there. So, I mean, not much more to say on DeAndre Swift. To be honest, if he's there late and you want to take that risk on the career graveyard of Detroit, be our guest. But I don't think any of us are looking for him. So we will move on. Chase Daniels, well done.
God, I'm good off the top
of your head. Well done.
Tommy.
Look at that.
I just checked it. I was really worried. I was like, please don't call me out, Detroit Lions.
Right,
I imagine the 2 or 3 tweets you would have got telling you were wrong.
I have the next player, another wide receiver, second wide receiver of the evening, and I feel like there's going to be some indecisiveness here between some of us. Jerry Jeudy. Now, he's coming from Alabama, moving to Denver Broncos, and just putting it in perspective, Alabama have managed to produce stuff like Julio Jones, Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley, all very high up at the moment in the NFL. So, are you targeting Jerry Jeudy this season?
Probably not. Right, I love Jerry Jeudy. I love Drew Lock. I think the Broncos are going to do amazing this year. I just don't know what route they're going to take to be amazing. I don't know if all of a sudden Melvin Gordon is going to be that superstar running back you need, and he's going to take 60 passes this year, and that's going to eat into his targets. You know, last year they had Cortland Sutton running all over the pitch like a madman. He was basically the only person who could catch a ball on that team. And they had Joe Flacco for the majority of the season, and Cortland Sutton still put up great numbers. They drafted 2 great wide receivers. They'd got Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler. I think Hamler's going to be great in the slot, and I think he's going to be great for yards after catch. And I think Jerry Jeudy is probably one of the most polished outside receivers coming into the league off of this year's draft. It's just a bit scary that for this team to be good, Drew Lock has to make that step up. And I'd love to believe he is. I love taking him real late in a draft just in case he does pop off. But, oh boy, that's a lot of risk.
Just for context, this is a 10, 12-man PPR redraft. In Dynasty, yes, get him, taxi him, or play him. I think, as the Bear points out, you've got Lindsay as well, pass-catching back.
Yep.
Third down plays may bring in. He's shown he's good. And the only thing that worries me is Drew Lock, yes, we keep talking extrapolate out last season games, but there's so much that's going to change this year, and that conference and division they're in is so tough. But if you did look at Melvin Gordon having a stormer, and the only reason I'm higher on Jerry Jeudy than others is Keenan Allen, Melvin Gordon, Austin Eckler, and Mike Williams were all relevant fantasy assets in the Chargers, who have a worse O-line, arguably a worse defensive line apart from Bosa and some secondary. And the quarterback was too busy adding another kid to his roster than using accuracy.
Amen, brother.
So, you know what? Amen. He goes for number 10, fair play. He needs to get number 10, does Philip. But as I can call him, I'm one of his mates. You know, legit. Jerry Jeudy, yeah, I would take him late round. I'd also say, out of all the rookies, wide receivers we've talked about, I think he has the greatest potential to go off. Because if anything happens to Cortland Sutton, sweet Lord, his numbers jump through the roof. While at Dallas, we talked about CeeDee Lamb, you've got Amari Cooper and Gallup to fight for. Other wide receivers will touch upon, have people in their way. Jerry Jeudy has one person.
I'd argue there's one other wide receiver I'd rather take a punt on in this year's rookie class over Jerry Jeudy, but I'm sure we'll touch on him in a little bit. But he's such a good player, Jerry Jeudy. Just go watch some of his college highlights on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, click pause, open a new tab, go watch some highlights, and then come back and understand why I love this kid.
Don't forget to open a new tab.
New tab. Don't look. We need to get our watching time up, all right? So stay online, but just check out this kid, man. He's so good. And if Drew Lock makes that step, you're picking up a league-winning wide receiver in the 12th round.
Yeah, I can't see him. If anyone takes him earlier, I'd say profit for their mistakes. But in a redraft PPR league, even in a 12-man, if he goes any earlier than the 11th round in that.
Look, I'm just at the moment what I'm getting and what I'm enjoying is the fact that there are so many different opportunities that you can take late in the draft, find some sleepers. They may not produce, but they may. There are some gold mines here, but if someone takes them in the 11th, 10th round, you're like, really annoying. I was going for that. There is many more opportunities out there that aren't bad, and I feel like Jerry Jeudy is just one of those. But I want to move on to the player that you were just referring to there, Rich. So, who is this mystery man?
Jalen Reagor.
Jalen Reagor to the Eagles. Yep, coming from Texas, moving to the Eagles. And why so hot on him?
Well, Marquise Goodwin is gone, right? First of all. And Marquise Goodwin was very, very good at the 49ers. And I think he was coming in to fill some holes that the Eagles felt they had at wide receiver. And he was probably going to be their most favoured wide receiver there. He's opted out. He's out of the picture now. Alshon Jeffrey is currently on the pup list, and I've read a couple of reports which says it's almost certain he'll start the season on the pup list, and he could miss up to the first 6 weeks of the season as well. And then your final real challenge to Jalen Rieger there is Deshaun Jackson. And Deshaun Jackson is about 1 million years old. He's not, he's like 33, I think.
Still quick.
He's still quick. He's still very, very good player. You know, this is his second stint with the Eagles. He
didn't really play much last year, did
no,
he?
He picked up an injury very, very early on. He only played a handful of games. And when you're getting past that 30 years old and you're playing an elite sport like the NFL, I don't know how much I trust his recovery. So if you look at it, potentially their 3 main wide receivers aren't there. Are you going to throw the ball to Jalen Rieger or JJ Arcega-Whiteside?
The only issue I have
is Arcega-Whiteside. I actually am looking at him to break out over Rieger. And
Really?
that is only because he knows the system. He's been there an extra year. He actually looked okay in the couple of games. They actually got some snaps in ahead of the other wide receivers. And the only other person that could stop Rieger kicking off are the tight end sets, Ertz. If those options are all gone, Ertz becomes a PPR farm. I shouldn't be telling you this because you may draft Ertz before me. And if you do, I'm going to name your firstborn son.
But here's my other take on this, though. Carson Wentz is a genuinely good quarterback. I think he's one of the more underrated quarterbacks out there at the minute. I know everyone's like, there's a statue of Nick Foles out. I know this is always going to be your argument. There's a statue of Nick Foles outside whatever Philadelphia Stadium is called. No one cares. It's Philadelphia. Sorry, Philadelphia. I'm going to get a lot of hate for that on Twitter. Nobody cares that there's a statue of Nick Foles outside the stadium. Carson Wentz is their franchise quarterback. He is a good quarterback, provided he stays healthy. And we've seen from the situation in Dallas, a good quarterback can support 2 good wide receivers. If we assume Alshon Jeffrey's going to play 6 games, there's a
if he's lucky.
Yeah, there's a
but
great
to your point,
there's a great Instagram
quarterback
account I just want to plug for a moment called Sports Med Analytics, I think it's called. And they basically, I'm assuming they're doctors, I don't know, but they basically look at a person's injury history and they give them ratings for the coming season as to what their risk of injury is. It's 4 out of 5 injury risk for Alshon Jeffrey. So
that's low.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought it would be
that's being
6 out of
kind
5.
Exactly. So discount Alshon Jeffrey. Sean Jackson is meh. Marquise Goodwin would have been great, but he's not there. So I don't see why they can't support both Arcega-Whiteside and Rieger.
Are you happy with his numbers from college, though? Like, it's interesting to see that actually in his last season, his number went down. He went from 72 receiving down to 43. And from 1,000 yards down to 600.
Yeah, but he played less game. He had less receptions.
One less game. One game. That's all. It's not exactly make or break. He went from 11 touchdowns down to 5.
It's Big 12. And for me, no, it's not Big 10. It's not SEC.
It's not the pack.
Yeah, there are some question marks over him, and there's a reason he fell towards the Eagles there. But I think, as the Bears pointed out, you have got a questionably elite quarterback in Wentz. And I say questionably because of the reasons we discussed. And last year, the wide receivers in Philadelphia didn't put up any numbers. Not even Nelson Aguilar, who should have profited, didn't. There was no one, apart from Miles Sanders and Ertz, who profited in that offense last year. And finally, to touch upon the idea that a good quarterback can make 2 wide receivers profit, i.e. Dak Prescott with Dallas, a not so good quarterback can also make them profit in Jameis Winston last year, Godwin and
Evans.
And Evans. So I think Arcega-Whiteside and Rieger could profit, and I think Rieger may end up at WR2. I'm strongly feeling. I have him as my finishing wide receiver 30, maybe sneaking into the top 25. Depends on the season and honestly who gets COVID.
Yeah, I've got him as my wide receiver 26. Just because there's so many targets to go around with what that backfield's looking like. I think he's going to get over 70 receptions on the year.
Right. Interesting stuff. So where you going to draft him if he's still available? Where are you looking for Rieger?
I'm slightly worried he's going to raise a bit higher than you wanted. You know, he was someone that you could, I think you did it last week, didn't you, Tom? You can pick him up historically last round of a draft.
Yeah, maybe 15th, 16th, yeah.
I'm just hoping the hype doesn't build, and it doesn't look like it is, but, you know, it's crazier things have happened in fantasy football than the hype building and him going 11th or 10th round. That's too rich for me. If I can pick him up 14th, 15th round, I'm all right.
If someone takes him 10th or 11th, there's more established WR2s out there to take. I'd rather have Jerry Judy in the 12th and someone pick Riga in the 10th. But can I see him climbing in past the top 10 rounds? If anyone else opts out from Eagles, maybe. And the only reason he's probably not higher is the centre did his Achilles. He's out for the season. Brooks, they're really good centre.
Yeah.
And that, you saw the O-line, you saw it in All or Nothing. When that started to crumble, that's what makes a good quarterback, is a good O-line. The only ones who really are amazing at that, without them, are people like Russell Wilson, who is frankly unbelievable. And that's my only thing. Will Wentz have the time to pass it to Rigo? Or will Miles Sanders and Ertz just profit from checkdowns?
Yeah, they're perfectly good questions. I was very excited about Riga, but I want to be very, very clear. I'm not suddenly going to take him in the 6th round. He's going to win your league. I'm saying pick him in the last 3 rounds, and you've just a genuinely good shot of a flyer this year. Someone who's going to potentially come out for you at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Right. That's so another good sleeper to sit on and think about when you're at the 12th round and not really knowing who to click and really just happy and drunk with your exit strategy. So anyway, looking at someone who potentially has got fantastic potential is a running back called Cam Akers. Now, he's going to the Rams. Todd Gurley has moved on. Are we going to see huge numbers coming from him? Okay, so let me put my enthusiasm behind this, and obviously as I'm the only one here. So, Gurley put up touches 343, 315, and 254 times in the last 3 seasons. Right? Now he's gone, there are 254 vacated touches left open.
I have 223. Why are my numbers wrong? Sorry, carry on.
So so if Cam Akers comes into that, even takes 3/4, 50%, and they just put him in and just drive him like they did with Gurley, just really work him over, he's going to just produce numbers. Even if he doesn't get many touchdowns, just the yardage alone is going to get you some points. And I think, once again, we're talking about rookies who people aren't going to possibly pick up in the, sub 10 rounds. If you can pick him up 10, 11, 12, I think that's great value.
I don't think he'll fall 10 or 11th. I've seen him going 7th, 8th.
Yeah.
Maybe,
wow. I haven't seen that yet.
Falling into the 9th, and I have seen him climb into the 6th because he's a good flex. If you've, done strong wide receivers early, picked up a premium tight end and a quarterback, you're looking for that flex option in PPR. I've seen him go 6th, 7th, and that's
because he's able to. He's got a passing catch as well. Like in last season, he's 30 receiving yards, 30 receiving catches. 225 yards as well. So, in my mind, he's up there with CH in terms of pass and catch.
Now, I think in order to be confident that Cam Akers is going to be a good asset for your team, you have to be a fortune teller. Because much like we were slightly concerned about the Damian Williams and Clyde Edwards-Helaire situation,
yes,
we don't really know just how much someone like Darrell Henderson, or maybe even Malcolm Brown, I'm not sure, how much one of those two is going to be involved. And you're right, over 200 carries were vacated by Gurley last year, and by all accounts, those are bell cow numbers. But if they split it even 70-30, all of a sudden you're down 170 touches or whatever. And that is concerning. That, and the Rams don't actually rush that much. They're a very pass-heavy team. They had the 6th fewest rushing attempts last year.
Yeah, you've got Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Tyler Higbee. You're going to pass it. Josh Reynolds is up and coming. I honestly think their O-line isn't that strong anymore. They've had to get rid of a lot of talent on the defensive line. So they're going to be playing from, I'd say, negative game scripts. And you looked at them last year. They were getting turned over by teams. They're having to pass it, as we saw them in London. They're having to pass. Did you see Gurley actually break through effort?
No.
The O-line wasn't creating the separation. But you've got such good receivers, you're going to pass it. And that's, as you pointed out, Zebra, yes, he's proven he can catch 30, but that's not near Edwards-Helaire's catching level. I'm not looking at him maybe get some third down plays and use Darrell Henderson and Malcolm Brown as the early grinders. And I think, he'll be lucky if he gets 40% snap share in the first few games.
What I think might save him for fantasy this year is I think he's going to have a lot of red zone value. He's a proven player to be great at breaking the tackle. And I think if they're at a, I don't know, 3rd and goal situation from 4 yards out, or 2nd and goal, I don't see any reason they don't just give him 2 attempts just to smash that ball into the end zone every time.
See what he can do.
And I think from that, I can see him getting up to about 10 touchdowns on the ground next year, which is pretty good.
He's
for
a
rookie.
chunky unit. I don't know if that's a technical term. Look, he's 5'10", coming in at 217 pounds as his draft profile.
He's no Jonathan Taylor though. We're just saying, like, he's no unit like Jonathan Taylor.
No, but sometimes being smaller, having that lower center of gravity, and say he builds up a bit, he really works on his burst, explosive potential. I think the Bears got a point as.
I mean, that's the selling factor of CEH, isn't it? Is that he's not the tallest, but actually breaking tackles, as you say. So maybe it's another opportunity like CEH. Get the red zone, get points that way.
Screens, get it to him in the open backfield, try and set some stuff from that. Look, problem is there's no preseason games, which in one sense is good. We've discussed. I'm just worried the committee there is stronger than a lot of other teams. And that's why he's falling. I think that's the only reason he's falling. If there wasn't Malcolm Brown and Henderson there and it was a situation like CEH, he'd probably be in the top 4 rounds.
Do you think he will do better or worse than J.K. Dobbins this year?
Better. I think better. I think he's got the bigger opportunity. I think the Ravens at the moment, you're talking about other people taking those touches, then just Jackson alone I'd be worried about, let alone adding in Ingram.
Yeah, I think he does better than Dobbins in fantasy. Half 1, yes. Half 2, I think Dobbins closes the gap.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at his touchdowns last year for Florida State. 14 rushing touchdowns. That's pretty big numbers.
It's not
So
bad.
it's obvious. Yes, it's pretty good
You see
considering
quite a lot
Florida
of college
State's a
running
tough
backs, well,
comp.
not quite a lot, but your elite college running backs seem to end up with about 20 on the year, don't they? So 14 is a pretty good show.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't
18
in,
overall
like,
in scrimmage.
the best team ever. And I think, to be honest, will he end up J.K. Dobbins? I think he'll be slightly better than that. But again, we don't know. I say Henderson stats going off. That's the risk.
Yeah.
Right. Good point then to aim for if you're looking for him. We're saying 6 is early, 7, 8, 9 kind of where if you want him, that's where you should be aiming for. So moving on to another player that I particularly want to. Once again, this is it. There's so many good opportunities. Justin Jefferson moving over to Minnesota Vikings. Now I'm super excited because he's falling behind Thielen, who won't be moved from wide receiver 1. I think anyone can admit to that, but there's still plenty of targets. Diggs, was still a very good fantasy producer out there. Now he's moving in. Justin Jefferson's moving into that position. I don't see anyone else taking wide receiver 2 there. Last year he did 111 receptions in LSU, which is massive for 1,540 yards and 18 touchdowns. Now that was only he only trailed Jamar Chase, who's his teammate, who wasn't eligible to be in the draft this year. So next year, look out for him. He is coming. I swear he is going to be massive. But for this year anyway, Justin Jefferson, I think he's going to be absolutely massive with the Vikings. I think he's going to slot in next to Thielen very nicely and take up all those targets that Diggs has left behind.
I literally couldn't agree more. My take on him is he's just going to, realistically, the only real name in that wide receiver room, Adam Thielen. Diggs vacates 94 targets. I'd imagine Justin Jefferson comes in and soaks up at least 80, 85 of those. We talked about Stephon Diggs consistently being a good wide receiver 2. You imagine there'll be some kind of learning curve, so maybe we're looking at more of a flex than a wide receiver 2 value from Justin Jefferson as his ceiling. I think a lot of it will be potentially matchup dependent as well. You don't know how he's going to deal against NFL level corners and safeties. And the Vikings are a run heavy offense. But as with so many of these names, we're looking at a player you're taking 13th round, potentially with Justin Jefferson, 12th, 13th round, if you have to take him. And so much upside for someone who could end up being this year's Stephon Diggs.
Yeah.
I think he goes earlier than the 12th round.
His current ADP is 121.
Is it really?
In PPR.
Interesting.
So yeah, I think he goes. Yeah, this is quite funny. Like, I think he goes in the 12th round. Yeah, his current ADP is 121. Like, I don't. ADPs change all the time to back up the zebra here. And like, if you get a feel, and if there's any rumors about Thielen, if he goes anywhere near that COVID IR before our draft at the end of August,
Oh my God! Yeah.
oh, how high does he shoot? I mean, this is it. We talked about Jerry Jeudy only having to beat out Cortland Sutton to get. Anything happens to Thielen, who are the Vikings meant to pass to? Who's their next wide receiver 3? I mean, we talked about Denver having KJ Hamler, and they're all right. Vikings are a run-heavy team. Justin Jefferson. Have you seen the stuff he's put on Instagram? His route running, his ability to get separation, his air height, the ability he can jump is incredible. And do you know what? If I was Thielen, I'd be quite worried. And I think second half of the season, I wouldn't be surprised to see Jefferson actually being targeted more. But the only thing that is probably going to stop Jefferson going too high is Kirk Cousins, who, bless him, as the Vikings put out, if you've seen it on social media, look, catch Kirk Cousins' ball, and all the fans were hilariously just filming a ball just flying past him trying to catch it. And I think Diggs and Thielen could have had better numbers. And the reason why they're a run-heavy team, Kirk Cousins' accuracy, and especially in big games, the pressure gets to him and lets him down. I think that's the only thing limiting Jefferson this year is the quarterback. If he had Mahomes, if he had Dak, if he had Kyler Murray, say he was at Arizona and Hopkins wasn't there, how much higher would he be? Is my point. So I think his landing spot, I still think the Vikings got incredible value. I think he was 25th in the first. Incredible value. And yeah, I think it's only Jerry Jeudy or CD Lamb that can outscore him this year.
The only other little concern is he lined up vast majority of snaps at LSU out of the slot. Now, to step into that Stephon Diggs role, you are going to have to be proficient at lining up outside as a X or Y receiver, But he's a good player. I don't see why he can't learn that. He's fast enough as well. So, again, great value, man. I've not really spent too much time looking into rookies, and I'm glad we did this episode because I've looked through so many of them, and now I feel like I'm going to get to 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th rounds, and I'm just going to be spending more time trying to work out who I'm picking than I am in the first 5 because there's so many great flyers you can take round here.
Yeah, agreed.
And again, if you're listening from our league, don't pick any of these.
If you're listening, Rob,
leave them all
keep
to
paying
us.
for your little service, and we'll see you in the finals, mate.
And Rob,
right,
keep paying
fantastic.
people to do your draft. You wang.
So anyway, moving on to our last wide receiver of the night, Henry Ruggs III, moving to the Raiders. I don't really have many high hopes for him. I'm not looking at him in the draft. I don't know if any of you two are a bit more enthusiastic about this player. I think Raiders doesn't excite me that much. His college numbers don't excite me that much compared to some of the other rookies. Happy to hear your thoughts.
All I'll say is he's a very John Gruden draft pick. He was the fastest player at the combine, and I feel like any analyst should have looked at that and gone, "Oh, we know who Gruden's drafting this year," because just goes. I guess all you can hope for is that he's trying to fill that Antonio Brown role they had in mind from last year, but it's just a difficult team to get excited about, especially with a move to a new city this year.
I think the Raiders could have traded back and got him later. That's what, if you're a Raiders fan, would frustrate you. And yes, he's a deep ball threat. That's all he is. He's a speed demon, deep ball threat. Comparing him to Antonio Brown as a replacement, I can't say it. And he's hurt himself coming into the season. He's injured. I think in our league he'll go undrafted. I honestly think in some other leagues he'll be left on the waiver wire. And he's just a bit smaller than me in real life, which is weird because on the football field. Yeah, he's 6 foot. 183 centimeters for our European listeners. And at Alabama, even when he had Tua, he didn't put up big numbers. So for me, I think the Zebra and the Bear have said it. I'd maybe waiver wire stash him, just put like an eye on him, or maybe he's worth like your 16th pick. in a draft or 15th. Depends on your league and where you're playing. Dynasty, yep, taxi him. Get him, taxi him. Yeah, I actually think the Raiders... Can you see him going deep that much? Has Derek Carr actually thrown deep that much ever?
Well, has he had the player to throw deep to? I mean...
Amari Cooper, he had.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, last year, admittedly, no. But they did have them. They just were crap. And the Raiders... He's a game manager, is Derek Carr. He's not a gunslinger. He's not your Jameis Winston. He's not going to be taking deep shots like Rodgers. And for me, I think Ruggs is a weird one. They're trying to use him to separate the secondary and give space into the slots. So actually, I'd look at more Brian Edwards and Hunter Renfrow. Look at Hunter Renfrow's numbers last year. Says it all.
Derek Carr is too beige to be taking those big shots downfield on a regular basis that someone like Ruggs needs to be fed for fantasy.
$30 million a year of beige, though.
Yeah, but it's
similar money to
safe.
Russell Wilson.
I feel like the Raiders are one of those teams who are like, look, we're not going to win a Super Bowl, but we also don't want to be like really, really bad. Derek Carr, he's perfectly good. He's safe. He'll get the job done. We'll be there. We'll go plus or minus 2 games from even every year, and we'll just be happy with that for a few years until we've paid off our new stadium in Vegas.
Which is a good new stadium. It looks amazing.
Awesome. That's one with all the screens.
I didn't realise.
Yeah, the Allegiant in Vegas. Yeah.
I didn't realise it was actually on the Strip.
Yeah.
Is it on the Strip?
It's just I think it's at one of the ends anyway, but it's literally at the end. You got this amazing new NFL stadium. Think of the traffic they're going to get from there. People just visiting, packed out every day, every game.
Well, not this year. That was the issue. They're trying to get people to stay in Vegas for the Sunday and then into the Monday. So obviously you go to the football game, then you go back to the casinos.
Yeah.
Which is going to be a bit of an issue, but if they're allowing people into casinos in America, why can't they allow them into a stadium?
Oh, that's a good point.
Possibly not one for us to this side. Anyway, moving on to our very last running back of the night as well. Because Siobhan... I just combined both the names then. God, I struggle with these names all the time. Rich, why don't you take it away?
Keyshawn Vaughn.
There you go. Thank you very much.
I think I was slightly higher on him when he got drafted than I am now. I mean, the most key piece of information here is that Tom Brady and Ronald Jones II share a birthday. So to me, that is the perfect science that Ronald Jones will be the lead back next year. I mean, that's all the evidence you need.
Don't even start this because you're just jumping on like Tom's theory now of oh god, what's the
D
name?
Johnson theory?
D Johnson theory.
What do you mean, what's the name? What's the strat? I'm coining that, and it'll break you.
So you've got a D Johnson strat, Rich. You've got the Brady Jones shared birthday strat. I'm gonna have to come up with some wild, crazy theory now.
Well, I mean, my thing about it, I can't remember the last time Tom Brady was the quarterback for a very high finishing running back. We saw last year that Bruce Arians is very volatile when it comes to his backs. And from all accounts that I'm seeing across all of the Bucks social media and all of the Instagram and Twitter communities and all that kind of stuff, is everyone is fully expecting Rojo to take the starting job. So but Keyshawn's still going very, very high. He's landed on the COVID list at the minute, which if he's actually got COVID, I think increases his value for me because it means it's highly unlikely he's going to miss time during the season. But compared to the other running backs we've talked about, I can't get excited about him if I'm honest. Apart from DeAndre Swift, I'll take over
being
DeAndre
signed.
Swift. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't help either, does it? That pushes him one spot further down the depth chart. You have to imagine Rojo will probably still be the lead back because Shady's too old now to take on bell cow. Well, I say that. I mean, we're a team of OAPs and we're really leaning into that motif. But you'd imagine Shady's going to be there, much like he was in Kansas last year for a lot of those, like, just one big explosive play every 2 drives type scenarios. And I don't see any reason that'll change.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think it's just pushing Keyshawn further down.
I wouldn't even touch Keyshawn Vaughn in Dynasty, to be honest. I think there's too much risk in that Tampa thing with Bruce Arians. Could next year, even more running backs are coming up into contract years. If the Bucks win a Super Bowl or get close to a Super Bowl, or even just win some more games and lose games, should be an achievement for him. I think players want to go there. You've got Brady. That name attracts talent now. Would you have signed McCoy last year? Probably not. Brady brings names.
I think we've got a 2, maybe 3-year window where we're going to be a sought after franchise for people to come and be a part of. And unfortunately for Kashawn, I just don't think he's potentially good enough to be towing the line with the other players who will want to come play.
honest,
So
it was a weird
unfortunate,
draft
lad,
pick.
you had a good looking scenario, and I think Shady was the final nail in your coffin.
I think for me, Zebra, I think that's running backs wrapped up because Keyshawn Vaughn.
I mean, look, I think the last couple of people there, Henry Ruggs, because I can't say his name, Vaughn. We're trading off on the aspect of, there are just better, more established players, as we said before, that you target over them. Whereas I feel like the opportunity for some of the other, Jonathan Taylor, CEH, is real and can give you fantasy points this season now. Not talking Dynasty, but PPR. So, right, with that, I think we should move on to our petting zoo. We have a question here that I'm going to throw at you, which I feel like after talking a lot about these rookies and how the vacant targets are going to change, opt-outs are going to change, this is a really great one that I think we did touch upon. So, are you ready? If you miss out on one of the top 5 tight ends, so we're talking Kelsey, Kittle, Ertz, Andrews and Waller, who's going to be your next top targets? From Jürgen in Liverpool.
That'd be Jurgen. Thank you very much, Mr. Klopp, and congratulations on your
I'm not very good
success
with
this year.
names here. I'm really bad.
Congratulations, Mr. Klopp. Wonderful job.
Congratulations. EPL
If
what?
you miss out on one of the top 5 tight ends, Kelsey, Kittle, Ertz, Andrews and Waller.
Who were you going for? Now, first of all, when are these going to go? So we say these 5 are disappearing within the first 5 rounds. They 5-6 rounds. Where do you then start looking for a tight end again to get the best value? Do you say, right, I'm going to secure someone straight away, or do you wait until the 7th, 8th, 9th? What's your game plan?
I think if I miss out on those 5, I'm starting to look down the barrel of streaming. if I'm perfectly honest, I mean, you can take a punt on someone like Hayden Hurst. There's a lot of vacated.
I mean, you were talking about
targets
Jack
that's potentially
Doyle earlier, weren't you?
Jack Doyle might come out the woodwork, but that's a bit of a long shot.
I think Austin Hooper maybe at Cleveland
because
he's
he is
proven and
he's
they
an
paid him a lot of
athletic
money.
unit.
A lot of money, the highest paid tight end in the league, isn't he?
I think that's for me who I'd be looking at next if these went, or maybe roll the dice on injury risk. Evan Ingram, that'd be. After that, you are talking streamers. Are you looking at old men from Bucks?
That is true. Actually, I do keep forgetting that Gronk is back.
Join the pensioners, but
That's a lot of unknowns there, though, isn't it?
yeah.
But again, if you're taking a punt on Austin Hooper, Hayden Hurst, it's no different to taking a punt on Gronk.
So here's a nice question for you then.
He's with a
though.
quarterback he's got an undeniable link with, Tom.
That's very true.
He came out of retirement for Tom.
Exactly.
If you are looking to stream your tight ends, then would you be looking to try to capitalize on potentially a rookie instead? Are you trying to trade up that value in order to get a stream the tight end, whoever comes, fine, and you're trying to get that value back by having a sleeper possibly, or even someone else?
I think if you miss out on those 5, you're, probably round 7 onwards?
Yes.
I'd imagine round 6, maybe round 7 is where Waller's finally going, if you're lucky. So through round 6 and round 7, if you've not ended up picking up a tight end, just focus on building your depth. Chances are, if you've not had to spend a pick on a tight end, you've got a pretty solid running back, wide receiver, and hopefully quarterback core by that stage. Because by round 6, you should have one of a good quarterback or tight end, in my eyes. Otherwise, you're going to run into a lot of troubles this year. Just keep building depth. You're in a position now where you can just start taking flyers. Maybe a round earlier than usual, you start looking at people who's going to be cheap for me to get here, but who's got this league winning upside. Are you taking handcuffs? Are you taking some of the rookies we've talked about? I don't know. Tight end's a dumpster fire position. You got 5 who'll be great, and then you've got
There's a lot of
big old
positional
gaps in the rest of
scarcity.
them. Yeah.
I mean, it depends where your pick is and what falls to you the
Right.
value. Let's say you just miss out on them. Let's say you're middle of the round and you're waiting for that tight end and he goes just before you. So let's say in the middle of the third, and Kittle and Kelsey have gone, and you're waiting maybe for Ertz, and he goes just before you. Someone reaches for him. Do you then panic and pick early, and try and get Andrews, like pick up too early, or do you try and wait for a Waller, or are we then saying, wait, real depth and focus on the others? What would be our advice to slightly mix the question up for Jurgen?
My tactic this year: secure a tight end. There's plenty of quarterback depth. If I have to sacrifice a Dak Prescott pick in the 5th to get Mark Andrews or Darren Waller, I'm doing that because I'm confident I can pick up an Aaron Rodgers or someone like that further down the order to then cover my quarterback hole. Baker Mayfield might have a big bounce back year. Drew Lock's going undrafted most of the time. We just said if he has a step up, he's going to be a top 6, top 8 quarterback at some point. Secure your tight end. That's all I can say. This question shouldn't be a question. Don't miss out on your top 5. If you do, you've drafted wrong.
Did you miss out on any of the top 5 tight ends last year, Rich?
Yeah, I did, and it killed me. I ended up with, I think I had...
OJ Howard.
Then I had OJ Howard for a bit. Then I had Jimmy Graham for a bit. And week in, week out, I had Jameis Winston on my team. And week in, week out, my biggest headache was tight end. That tells you how difficult it is if you don't pick up a good tight end.
Right, look, I think with that, we should call it a day.
If you've enjoyed today's show, be a friend, tell a friend. If you're listening to the podcast, then go ahead and drop us a review on whatever platform you use. If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and drop a like. I think it's down there somewhere. Who knows? It all helps us more than you can imagine. And best of all, it's free.
For any questions or your own Super Bowl takes, you can get in touch with us. Just drop us an email. It should be appearing on your screen just here.
It won't be, but carry on.
Or it might be down the bottom. Look in the About section of the video or on our channel. fancyfootballzoo@zoohousesports.com. So that's fancyfootballzoo@zoohousesports.com. Alternatively, if you're on the Twitter, you can find me @ZooHouseGo.
Or me at ZooHouseZebra.
Or me @ZooHouseBear. Or the podcast in general on Twitter and Instagram @ZooHouseSports_.
Well, thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you next week when we break down opt-outs.